Welcome back to the Take a Chance on You podcast, hosted by me, Alexandra Forsyth. Today, I'm so excited to be passing the mic to Michael Nollet, joining us today to talk about filmmaking, editing, and so much more. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Happy to be here?
Yes, very nice to have you.
Do you want to give the listeners a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Who am I? That's a good one. I kind of generally make documentary feature films, sometimes series, sometimes short films. Mostly that's my bag. And I've been doing it for 25 years, living in London, been working all around the world really with different projects. I think as you get more experience, people tend to invite you to different places, which is fun. Didn't get that when I was younger, stuck in a little dark room somewhere. And that's kind of me really. Yeah.
Nice, short and sweet. But we were talking before the podcast, the process behind filmmaking. I think for young filmmakers now, obviously they want to gain exposure, they want to gain experience, but actually understanding that it's a lot more than just filmmaking. There's the editing side, production. Anything you can offer out about that?
I think it's funny that I was talking to someone at the NFTS yesterday, and they were saying how they're trying to steer away from teaching sort of just theory-based stuff, and it's really just about picking up a camera, getting on with it, and just learning as you go. Theory can only get you so far. I think really it's just about cracking on with it and trying to pick up a camera, your phone, and just filming. It's fairly basic. I think we're all quite savvy now with Instagram and social media, so you just got to keep doing it and just keep pushing your content to what you want it to be. Just go in the direction that you feel is you and you're interested in.
But it's so interesting that you say grab your phone. So the landscape's changed really. It's evolved and adapted.
I think it was David Lynch who just said you can make anything look good, but you can't make it sound good. So I'd say the key thing is you get a nice big microphone and just film, so things film and sound, they sound good. If it sounds good, it's great. But if you have a camera and it's wobbling around, that's fine. But if the wind's in the mic and you it doesn't feel very professional.
Yeah.
So actually, the best thing is just pick up your camera. So many films have been filmed on an iPhone and released as a cinematic film.
Recently?
Yeah. I mean, this Tangerine Dreams was filmed on an iPhone. God, you'd have to look that up because I can't remember all of them by list. But literally, just do ChatGPT, what films were filmed on an iPhone.
Yeah.
So many now.
We won't talk about AI today. I have gotten back from London Tech Week and my brain is in the AI realm. But I think maybe touching on it a little bit. Obviously, AI again is changing the landscape of all industries, not just filmmaking, entertainment.
I think touching on what I said before about picking up a camera, I think that was harder before, and you had to do it with film, and you had strips of film, and it's not much talking about that now because it's so gone. It's not even relevant to anyone anymore. But learning where I was physically cutting bits of film, and you're taking a long time to do it, you kind of got to ask yourself why it didn't work each time. And often I hear people just say, I don't know, it just worked because I tried it so many different ways and it seemed to work like this. And you so you don't know why it worked. So I think to start with, the craft was a lot of learning and then you got into it. Now you get into it straight away, which is exciting. But sometimes you can just keep winging it and you don't know why it's working. So I think just sometimes question yourself and just figure out, why did this work? Or ask different people what they think. And don't be afraid of a bit of feedback. So just trying to make them better is the key now.
Yeah.
I think that's the big change. I think there's so much content out there.
And if you think about the internet, where there's so much you can learn, self-taught, for example, online. I mean, going back to university in your early years.
I studied photography.
Was it still theory-based when you were learning photography, or was it hands-on? Because obviously now modules will have changed, courses will have adapted. Media and communications, for example, I know a lot of students study that, and then possibly photography, filmmaking, they go on to do it.
Yeah. I think when I did photography, there were two types of people. There were some that were quite restless and just got on with it, and I was one of them. I couldn't be bothered to print on colour. I was just like, quick, print it black and white, and all my pictures came out grey until I got to the end. And I remember the head of the course said, that can't be Mike's picture. It looks like one of his, but it's too well contrasted. And he was just like, nah, that's not him. And I had to improve. But basically, I was just restless and just wanted to get things done. And then it went from photography to making films quite quickly. Whereas other people would sit there and really delicately learn the craft. And really, I mean, I remember people figuring out how to process color by eye, just doing it from different exposures and just like mad. I don't know how you do that even. And that's a lost art because that's all done digitally.
Yeah.
But, they were real technicians, and that is amazing. And I guess filmmaking is a marriage of people who are a bit crazy and a bit technical.
A bit eccentric, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I'm definitely not the wackiest, and I'm definitely not the most technical. I think the film would just die a death if I was the technician involved.
So then after university, straight into filmmaking. What was the first project?
I was still at university. The first film I ever did was an animation. And I found a Beastie Boys track called The Blue Nun. I did a little animation to it. It was a little 30-second track on Check Your Head. And it was just real energy. And I was like, right, let's just do this. And I just spilled all this ink around the page and just animated it and had these little characters. And that was my first film as such. That was like a 1-minute animation piece. And then fast forwarding, I was then making little bits of film with friends and all the rest of it. And then when I came out of college, and I was like, the first thing you are is unemployed. You're like, yay, great. And suddenly you've been comparing yourself to all these greats in the arts world. And suddenly you're like, oh, I'm unemployed. So that was like, okay, what do I do? And I came across a scheme called FT2, which is extinct now. So not so relevant, unfortunately, but it was a way of getting in the industry. But before that, I met people in a pub in Soho. I was like, please let me work on your film, sort of thing. And I worked as a runner on a film called Still Crazy. And I learned a lot about people, meeting the director. The film had been in the edit for about 2 years. From a people perspective, learning curve. And the assistant editor, who was somebody who I was aspiring to be, I guess, at the time, she was, after the meetings, breaking down in tears. And I was just like, can I get you a cup of tea? And it was like the best thing I could have done because I was no help to her otherwise, just a little bit of a support role. The next first film I did was when I first got paid, I guess. And that was when I'd realized I'd learned all these different softwares. And I think that's really important, especially today when there's so many different softwares. Just learn as many as you can because you don't want to have to turn a job down because you can't do it. You kind of want to turn the job down because it's not for you or you're not interested. I was lucky that I'd learned Final Cut Pro, which was kind of a new software at the time. It was good.
It is good.
And I did that. And suddenly the BBC threw out all their old Avids and said, we're switching to Final Cut Pro. And all their editors were like, well, I can't do this. So I was like, hey, I've got it. And suddenly I got my first gig from being paid. And I was like, oh my God, this was brilliant.
Serendipity.
Yeah, but it was, it was a little job.
But you went out of your way, and there's a few things that you mentioned. I mean, number one, obviously networking, just getting yourself in a pub in Soho. Try and go to the hotspots. I mean, you can Google where do people hang out.
Yeah.
There are actually a lot of travel bloggers that do share, this is where so-and-so is, not named, but agencies or talent reps, if you're looking for that, they share pieces of information. So don't be afraid to kind of go and scout yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then obviously there's a lot of networking events in London. So there's a lot of filmmaking and media events, to be fair. I've seen quite a few in London. So if you're a young creative, get yourself out there. But can you explain to the listeners what is a runner?
Undesirable job, but it gets you somewhere. I think that's the thing. I didn't have the patience to be a runner, I must admit. I remember a friend of mine was a runner in a post-production house in London, and he would be sitting in the kitchen.
It's kind of like an assistant, right?
Yeah, but you're kind of out of the family in a way, I think,
Right.
Unfortunately. I think a lot of the big companies who take runners, they literally say, don't engage with the clients because that's not cool.
Right.
And some of the smaller ones, much more, go and engage. And so I would say, if anyone's saying, what is a runner and is it for me? I would say, probably don't bother with the big ones because you will literally be sitting in the kitchen waiting for the phone to ring and say, can I have a latte with oatmeal, please? And you'll hand it to them and that's it. I mean, I remember doing my first feature film I cut and this runner kept coming in and she was really interested in the process and she kept talking. And we just got on. We were just chatting. And then one day she came in a little bit more nervous than she usually was, and said, can I ask you something? Do you think I could hang with you for the day when you're editing one day? I was like, yeah, of course, please do. But she said, it's got to be a day when I'm not working. because they don't like me doing that. And I was like, oh my God, that's when I realized these big ones, they just say, no, don't engage. So it's very interesting, but I think you've got to either wait for that moment and ask somebody personally against the rules or whatever, and know that somebody will be watching you saying, no, don't do it that way. That's not on. Or find a smaller outfit where you've just got a little bit more leeway.
Me being me would be, obviously, I think the same as Michael, we'd probably be very controversial to say, just go for it and pick your moment. I think
on that note, I would say one other thing though. When you say pick your moment, I think that's exactly right. But don't forget that people who are a little bit above you actually like a compliment and they like being approached.
absolutely.
And I think that's really key, that whenever I've been approached, I don't think of it as a hassle. I just think, oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's like that. Everyone likes a bit of fluffing up, so quite frankly, just don't be worried to ask, but make it personal. If you're going to ask, say, I really like your project, or I like what you guys are doing, or it feels like a really nice vibe in here. Can I be part of it? Agree. These things will probably have to come with, sadly, a lack of money necessarily to start with. That is something that I'm not sure how to cope with these days. There's a lot of miss between employment and people finding work, and it kind of seems to be a bit of a miss at the moment. I think on top of that, if you can give your extra 10% and just look at the material, so when you're with the editor the next day or something, you can just say, oh, I really like that stuff that was there, or ask a question, get something to engage yourself with the guys who are working on it, because that before you know it, you might be assisting them.
But even what you said about the lady who unfortunately sounds like going through a stressful time, crying after meeting, but offering a cup of tea and being a people person, that can sometimes be the extra 10% that will get you in the next room and get you the opportunity that you want. So don't underestimate the people side.
Yeah, no, totally. I think a lot of it is people side. It really is. It's people side, and it's like just chatting to people.
The young creatives, obviously, they want opportunity, but if there are internships or some kind of funding programs, and it links me on to, you've done a lot of work with the Doc Incubator, and you do a lot of work to help young people anyway. So talk a little bit about that, because it's European. It's
I think one of the problems we've got in England is because we left Europe, and I don't want to moan about whether you're Brexit or not. That's irrelevant because it's happened now, and that's that. But
don't
it
get
means
political,
a lot
take
of
a chance on you.
Sorry,
do not get political and take a chance on you.
No. All very nice.
You have
all
to stay neutral. We do.
But because of that, it means that we get less European funding over here. Some people would say, argue that, because we don't pay for it in the first place, we don't get the funding. So the filmmakers don't get the investment from Europe. So it means not only do we have less funding, it also means the projects that we get involved with less diverse. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So for me, it was really important. My wife's Slovak. I'm half Dutch. I've always felt quite European. So for me, it was a real blow. They do have UK projects as well, so you can apply. I think the cost of attending is just a little bit higher for a UK resident because.
And they don't cover the costs.
The point is you pay a very small amount compared to what you get back, hopefully. Yeah. It's a residency, so you go for a week and then that follows up by another week. And you have people like me there who basically take projects under their wing, maybe third in some cases, but they're starting out, they're fledgling filmmakers, in that sense. First feature films, so they've taken it seriously, so they're not first timers, but
but it's their baby, essentially.
Yeah, but exactly, it's their baby. It's a feature length film, and they've really focused on the subject. They're all documentaries, but it's their baby, and they've been filming it for sometimes. I mean, one girl was filming for 8 years in Ukraine since 2014, and she'd been filming this whole story. So you get completely lost. 8 years of material. And you think, right, what do we do with this? And it's really difficult. So I would come on board as a advisor, edit consultant, but it's about I think it's about helping them gain the confidence of what will work and what might not work. It's the confidence of trying to push the story to what it should be, what it can be. And it's just to really help them tell the story as best it can be, especially amidst all this footage that they may have filmed. And with lacking all that experience, they just, maybe it's like anything. If you've never run a marathon before, you don't know what pace to run at. You have no idea how to prepare for it, all this sort of thing. Once you've done it, you kind of know and you can tell other people. So it's something as straightforward as that. If you've done a short film, it's like a sprint, and it's got its own problems, and it's got its own completely new training regime and all the rest of it. But that is very different to running a longer race. And with a feature length film, it's a matter of understanding, how do I do this? How to pace the story out? How many characters to invest in? All this sort of thing. Doc Incubator is something that I've done for about 5 years. It's a great scheme, and unfortunately, we don't have anything like it in England.
And timeline during the summer?
Well, usually it's in April, and then it's in June, and then sometimes for some they have a third session to make your trailers and promos. This year is a little bit different because politics is crazy everywhere. Which project is going to get funded? We've gone backwards, unfortunately. So that's a problem. And in Europe, they are struggling with that. And Incubator this year has had to completely reduce himself down to a much smaller group. But next year, I think we'll be back up again.
Yeah, so you'll be doing it again. Sounds absolutely fantastic, and it's a shame. I do wonder whether we have anything similar here in the UK. We do have programs and schemes, but I guess nothing on that scale.
No, I think not. I mean, one thing that I'll mention, and edit it out if it's no longer existing, but the last time
I don't edit that much of the podcast. I'll edit that out that I've just said it.
It's all just natural, one take wonders. There was a thing that I started on called shootingpeople.org. And that was where I found my first feature-length film. It's an online forum where everyone can look for like-minded editors or camera guys or directors, but it's project-based.
Say the name again?
It's called shootingpeople.org. And it's a place where everything's project-based. So it's very practical. It's people are saying, I'm looking for a runner for a bigger project, or I'm looking for an editor for a project, or I'm looking for a cinematographer, anything. And it's a great place to come together. And I think what's good about something like that is that you can, because it's project based, you can personally suss out the project for yourself. And my advice would be, go somewhere like that and find projects. And even if it's a matter of volunteering to start with, it's a matter of, finding something that you think, oh, I like this and I could make it better. Don't just register for anything. But, just get in there and think, okay, what projects do I like the idea of? Because if you succeed in that project, or that project succeeds, you will go places with those people. Yeah. So make sure it's a project that you like, because there's no point doing something that you think, if you hate commercials and you think, oh, I'll do it anyway. Maybe not, because it won't get you anywhere unless it's already paid. But I think sometimes, and I say this honestly about Hollywood as well, they overcook their films. And so I'm talking about first-time filmmakers and all the way to Hollywood, unfortunately, because what's happened there is that producers have lost the chutzpah to actually be brave about stuff. I think Quentin Tarantino said he's seen 2 films in the last 10 years that he's impressed with.
God, he's such
and apart from that, I mean, he's a character himself.
I mean, Pulp Fiction.
But, yeah.
It's just...
Yeah.
And obviously, we all know the iconic dance scene, completely improvised. And it's scenes like that you watch back. And obviously, I love... Is it Jerry Lee Lewis? Is the song behind the dance scene? Because I used to work in hospitality waitressing, and that was one of the songs that were playing.
Okay, nice.
So obviously, you recognise it and know all the words. Yeah. But that scene, I mean, that just encapsulates a great director. And
but he's old school now. That's the sad thing. He's old school. And now, that's the thing. I think it's been taken over by a new wave of people. And I think it's nothing to do with it being a new generation being no good. It's not about that at all. It's just that I think people have become much more obsessed about making money. And maybe it's harder to make money because there's more content out there. So they're just trying to pack things. And going back to my original point, sometimes these films are too over the top. They're too complex. I mean, you watch a film and you think, I don't understand the plot. And sometimes I think they think that it's cool to be misunderstood.
There have been some films where the description just hasn't matched up. Michael's breaking the fourth wall by going on the phone whilst we're recording. I'm going to leave this in.
You can cut this bit out.
Whilst you're doing that, off the top of your head, what is your favourite film?
My favourite film is La Haine, which is a French film about... It's the day following the riots in France. So I'm looking at the camera now.
You're welcome to talk to the listeners.
It's a day in the life of 3 friends following the riots in France, in Paris. And Paris, unfortunately, has these riots that happen every 20 years, basically, a cyclical thing where the police despise the people And I think the people despise the police, and it just never gets any better. Politics aside, the film is a really amazing characterization of these three guys, three friends that represent all different walks of life in Paris. And it's kind of actually a comedy, but with a very, very dark ending. And it's beautifully filmed. It's all filmed in black and white, actually, to just emphasize the extremities of the opinions. Cinematography is just, it floats around these characters the whole way. It's beautiful. The soundtrack is just to die for. It's like a Quentin Tarantino soundtrack. It's just amazing music.
I feel like a soundtrack makes a film as well. You've got to marry up the story with the music. Totally. And that can sometimes get lost.
As we just mentioned with these other characters, are just headstrong and they're going to do it their way. And they'll say, shit, Mike, I'm really scared. I'm not sure I'm going to pull this off. And it's my job to say, yeah, they're vulnerable. And it's my job to say, I've got your back. Let's do this. And I will hopefully push them to make the strongest film possible, or the most out there film, or the most confident film, or whatever. And I think that's something that I can do. I couldn't be there in their shoes. I would melt. I would panic. But to be their backbone is something else.
I can't remember what I was watching. I think it was an interview with a very well-known person. And as soon as they finished the interview, they turned to the host and say, was that okay? And it happened. Immune to, you want feedback all the time. I do, always. I would never walk away from a project and think, gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Wouldn't. I think it's humility, you need it. And you do go on location, right?
I do sometimes go on location, yeah, absolutely. Not often, but sometimes I work on a project where we haven't finished filming everything. And that's something where I can play an active part in the writing. And by that, what I mean is also saying what we're missing is this, and this. So, for example, I think one project which I hold dear to me is a film where the director approached me. She'd already made a 90-minute film, and she said to me, would you like to finish this? I'm looking for a finishing editor. And I looked at what I saw, and I thought, I think you've made the wrong film here. She hadn't employed me. She was just saying, what do you think? So I thought I might as well be honest. And I just said, you know what? I think there's a completely different film in here that would be so much better. And she went with it. She went, okay, let's do it. I agree. And, so I wrote down all my notes, picking it to get apart. I mean, there's some great things as well. It's not like I was being negative.
Yeah.
I was just saying, but I think you can do more of this, more of that. And we made this film called The Return. And I really loved the experience. And she hadn't filmed a lot of the main characters because they weren't actually main characters at the time. But people like Shamima Begum, who was basically the kind of poster girl of ISIS. Unfortunately, it was not something that she chose. But when she went out there as a 15-year-old, being hoodwinked into, oh yeah, you got to come out and join the army, and we're going to be great. She was kind of pushed into this idea, because she was a bit of a reject from her own family and peer pressure at school. 3 friends said, let's go and do it together. So she felt the peer pressure of doing it with them. And when she got out there, her 2 friends got killed and she was forced into a marriage, which she kind of actually enjoyed in itself, but she was 15. And this was a film that had her on the periphery. And I said, she should be one of the main characters. And so, in fact, Albert, the director, went out again and filmed interviews with these girls. But we'd really talked about what we need from she'd filmed within this camp where they were imprisoned after ISIS had collapsed, and they were imprisoned, all the women. And so we discussed a list of shots that we were missing, and characters and things. And there was a kid who was flying a kite within the camp, and I thought that was an amazing metaphor for the freedom that they don't have. And so I said, find another kid with a kite and just film it to death, really just get that feeling of this kite that's, within these 4 walls of this prison, but flying this kite. And, at one point when we came back with the rushes, the kite fell out the sky because there was a lack of wind. And that again was another metaphor, and there was just really interesting things. At one point, the camp completely flooded, and all these women were all together trying to get the water out of the tents, and there was a real camaraderie between them.
It's also nostalgia, I think.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Us watching, you see the kite, the child, and you think, childhood.
Absolutely. And so for me, it was really nice to be able to dip into these metaphors and notions and just say, let's have some more of that, and also change the script. So that was, to me, if you're asking, a favorite project, I would say that's the one where I had a chance to really adjust what the film was about. It was a film that we did in lockdown, so that was another challenge. The first film I'd kind of edited in isolation in a way. And then she was based in Barcelona, so I flew out there a few times when everybody else wasn't allowed to fly. That was a strange experience as well.
Yeah.
We told the story of this reparation of these women and trying to get over their traumas. It was like the world's leading expert. He was giving us all this video footage because one thing that I was very good at was propaganda, their own propaganda. And they gained lots of finance from diaspora around the place that supported their ideas of this caliphate. And they were impressive in what they built. And I think the Western world didn't realize how much territory they had at a certain point. It was frightening. So it was powerful. Footage that they filmed for this propaganda was also very harrowing. And I remember one afternoon after lunch, putting my hand in front of the screen and just going through everything, not directly looking at the screen. I would just basically make a safe reel for myself to watch, because something like that, you can't unsee stuff. And it was quite horrific. So the subject itself was brutal, but it was a very rewarding film to work on.
Young creatives know that it's okay to do it. You just need to check in with yourself and possibly raise your hand if you're not happy about something.
Yeah, 100%. I think as a freelancer, it's difficult because I've often talked with projects and the teams I'm working with saying, oh, we really need to check ourselves out afterwards. But I would say a lot of the films that I've done have involved, death in many ways. So I remember the first feature film I did, which is about the Sri Lankan killing fields and the end of the civil war against the Tamil Tigers. I had the weirdest, horrible dreams throughout that time. And I'm sure that would be a psychologist's dream to just figure out what was going on in my head. But at least I was not in Sri Lanka. I was in a safe edit suite in London. And that for me made it feel very safe and made my life feel very grateful to have. So I didn't feel it was a negative project to work on at all. Quite to the contrary. But the imagery I was seeing, absolutely, really quite harrowing.
I wonder whether subconsciously your brain was trying to process what you were watching in a safe way. And they do often say dreams come up.
Yeah.
Even the most harrowing dreams, they might not actually be a negative. It's your brain's way of processing what's going on. How long are you editing for? That's another question. Is it?
Yeah, exactly. You're editing for a long time. But it's just certain images that pop up.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining them now, and I wouldn't want to describe them to you, but there's certain images I will never get out of my head.
Yeah.
And that's not nice.
But I guess if there's that strong story and going back to storytelling, you know what the end result is going to be.
And exactly. If those films give you conviction that you've done something right, and I absolutely hand on heart can say they did. Felt like I'd done my job, and we'd got the story out there, and it was nominated for an Emmy. And it was a strong film. I felt proud of it. Likewise with The Return, also nominated for an Emmy, but getting there. So you had to do it under the wire. And so she's an incredibly brave woman. And she did what I would never have been able to have done.
It really brings you back down. I'd love to go on location, and it's the hard-hitting stories that you get to tell.
Going through adversity. And any experience, I think you can draw on those things, positivity out of it, because you can realize, oh my God, I survived. 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And at the time they said, I had a fit in the middle of the night. I had no idea about this. And I got woken up by two ambulance men at the end of my bed. And I thought they were policemen come to arrest me. I thought, what the hell's going on?
What have I done?
No idea. And it was crazy. And then they said, "Oh yeah, you've had a fit." And I turned around and there was blood all over my pillow, and I thought, "What the hell's going on?" And then gradually we did these tests, and they said, "Yeah, you got a brain tumor the size of a golf ball." I survived it, and it was all fine. And they said to me, "You might want to stick with your family." I had a newborn son at the time. You might want to stick with your family, just let it grow in. But the point of that was you will die. And I just said, no, operation, come on, let's get out. So I was lucky that they discovered it and all the rest of it. And I'm not willing anyone to have something like this at all. But I realize, me personally, I look back on that as a positive experience. And I think any hardship like that can only be a good thing, that you can appreciate the next step and the next stage. And I'd say that about careers as well, really. If you're going through a hard time, yes, you can jack it in and say, F this, I'm not going to go with this. But if you do that, I hope you'll find something else that you love. I mean, my son at the moment is studying music production. I said to him, just do something that you love. And what he's found is he loves chefing. So he actually now splits his time between, he's got a job. I mean, he had a nice job down in London, but he's studying up in Leeds, and he found a pub, O'Neill's pub. He said it's not great. He's warming burgers up, but it doesn't matter. He's getting paid for it. And he likes the environment of the kitchen. And he will move up the ladder to other things, and he will hopefully, I think, when he comes ready and he finishes his course and he's like, okay, I'm good to try and get some music down, I think he'll have another way of supporting himself.
The goal is to have freedom, to be happy. How that fits into your life, you have to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
We've spoken about so much today. We're going to come to the end of Take a Chance on You. Do you want to give the listeners a roundup of 1 to 2 strategies starting out, filmmakers out there?
I think one nugget that I would say is
get yourself to Soho.
Get yourself to Soho, pub somewhere.
Go right back to the beginning.
Yeah. I think one thing that I would have said to myself is that when you don't get a job, don't get hung up about it, because often what I found is that so one job, I was working as a freelancer at the BBC for a lot of my early career. Again, I was starting on like a 5-minute section, then a 10-minute, then somebody got me to do a half-hour film. I was like, yes. And then an hour film, and I thought, oh my God, here we go. And an hour and film in current affairs. So it felt like more of a feature documentary sort of thing. And I was like, wow, this is great. I felt like I'd really got somewhere. And then the next series, they did because it was a very popular series, and they said, okay, we're going to do another series. I said, great, I'd love to be on board. And they're fantastic. Yeah. And we all met for some dinner somewhere. Oh yeah, we'll bear you in mind. And then never got the call. And I remember thinking, oh my God, and it really spooked me at the time. And I just thought, I'm not good enough. Something's, and there were times when I didn't have that great conviction. And I remember that, and looking back, it was only about 2 years later that I found out, oh no, they'd had a call that they had to do internal editors, and I wasn't staff. Yeah. That was it. So for 2 years, I didn't know, and it spooked me. I thought, oh my God, that was 2 years wasted worry.
But no point. Yeah.
And I think that was something that I really didn't need to worry about, and I worried about it, and it made me, I lost conviction at that point. And I remember there was a time when I stopped going to see films. I literally fell out of love with cinema, because I kind of thought, I'm watching people who have made it, and I haven't made it, and it hurt. Every time I saw a film, it hurt. And I thought, I don't want to see another film. And so there was a time I just didn't go and see films. And I guess I just pushed through that period. And then I started loving films again. And then I realized, oh, that was what it was. I was just it was too painful to see other completed films when I hadn't completed films.
Do you think with not just young creatives, but anybody in general, to kind of combat that, having a community around you and speaking to people and maybe just getting it off your chest, well, I haven't been called up for this thing, or I've missed this opportunity, or they've decided to go with somebody else, and talking about it? And when you said about success, that's the whole reason why I created Take a Chance on You, because I was listening to podcasts, going out and meeting people, they were telling me their challenges, and then I thought to myself, there's a gap here between social media, for example, everybody's seeing this idealistic life. Yes, you can have that, but know that you're a success now. Don't wait for permission. So I guess talking about it, having conversation, and just saying I'm a bit miffed off at the industry, really. Because I think the more of us that do it and actually open up and be vulnerable, change will happen. Well, it's got to. I think women and men, we definitely work together better than apart. I do believe that. I think we all come together in some way. Yeah.
I think definitely there's been, most of the projects I've been on, I've been the healthy balance of making sure there's a male in the team, whereas it would have all been all women. and vice versa. If I'm in an all-male team, let's get a woman in. Let's not be like this, because it becomes too much of one way. Either way is not good.
No.
So I think we definitely need a balance between all of us.
Absolutely.
The one thing I really thought was amazing was, again, for the film The Return we were doing, in this Syria, Kurdish-controlled Syria, is their political idea is, the men have tried to run this world for so long and it's failed. Let's get women to run it. And it's funny, they've got these whole movements which are all women-led. The armies are women-led. And it's like, wow. And when you see it from a Western perspective, it's kind of quite weird. But it's like, why should it be weird? But it's quite amazing. So it's very celebratory to be a woman in that culture.
What was it during World War II? Something relating to women. They were really
women ran all the factories and the buses, everything in London. It was completely women ran, because all the men were off fighting.
That's what I mean. So definitely it takes two.
Yeah.
It takes both. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
But going back to your point on your brain tumor, firstly, thank you for sharing that. And secondly, I had Risa August on the podcast from the US, and she was diagnosed with a brain tumor and from Canada to Mexico.
Wow.
So I think it's just serendipity that you came on and spoke about that, but it just shows that a little bit of adversity, getting through it to the other side.
Absolutely.
She just, I would encourage you to obviously listen to that, and I'll share it with you
fantastic.
after. But she went through the similar thing.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, that's amazing. If she decided, right, I'm going to do this cycle.
She said,
she probably wouldn't have done that if she hadn't
I was
had
on my couch and I had this bucket list, and I said, well, it's now or never. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So whatever it takes, get yourself out there.
And I think that's it now. It's whatever it takes. Build your network, build your portfolio, talk about your projects. So I think for your son as well, he could get on LinkedIn and start talking about a little bit of chefing and music. How do they go together? What am I learning in one versus the other?
Yeah.
People really relate to that, because there's a lot of people out there now, and I've got quite a big community of freelancers, actors and actresses that I know very well, and they come on the podcast, but they work alongside trying to get work, and they've got a half a dozen part-time roles. Don't be afraid to do that, because feels like it's the only way.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I'd be doing.
Not negative.
I don't need to do it at my point in my career, but that's I would have. And to be honest with you, I sometimes miss it. I miss the teaching. And in fact, I was talking to NFTS people yesterday, and they were saying, well, we'd love to get you on board, but it's not that much money, I'm afraid. Yeah. And I said, I'm not in it for the money for that. I kind of miss. I mean, that's one side that we haven't really talked about, but the one side of editing is it's quite a solitary job. You have to enjoy your own company.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you do, but it's also nice to have a balance. And I would say the consulting side and the working with other people, and often younger people, is a really good way for me, it's a good energetic way of getting out of your bubble.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
we haven't spoken about that. I mean, if I think about the podcast, really, running it independently and editing, I mean, each episode, 4 or 5 hours. It doesn't have to take that long, but I really love to just sit there with an episode, watch it all the way through, then I edit, then I rewatch it all again. I mean, that alone is, God, if we're talking about a 40-minute episode, you do that 3 times.
No, absolutely.
Really, and you're the same.
I take, it could be a year to make a whole film.
Yeah.
You obsess over it. And I think it's good that you obsess, because if you didn't obsess, you wouldn't get it to the level it needs to be.
And you can tell it's rushed. You can tell it hasn't been handled with the care that it should be. And I mean, for me, that's just from a podcast point of view. So you think about a fully length film. It's crazy. This was such a good conversation. Obviously,
nice.
Michael and I know each other very well. We know each other through Michael's family.
Godfather, yes. That was a random link. Yeah.
I think we'll wrap up for there. So I think for the young listeners, one final recommendation: don't give up. You will get to where you want to get to. Build your network, talk about your projects, get out and about, and it will happen. It's got to. The industry's moving, it's adapting, it's evolving. There's some really good people around to connect with. And that's Michael on Take a Chance on You, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.